Welcome to another episode of Choose Well. We're so glad you could join us today, and I'm very excited to welcome our special guest, Toby. Now, I'm sure by now you're tired of me saying special, but truly, I believe every single person that comes on our show is truly special because they have something special and unique to bring. So, Toby, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Nana-Hauwa. It's really good to be here and well done with what you're doing on Choosing Well podcast. And I'm really excited to join you today.
Thank you. It's going to be a good episode. So, just as we always begin, please share with us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to these days.
Okay, so as Nana has said, I am Tobi Ransomed. I am an educator, a passionate one. I'm very passionate about education, getting access for children that are from underserved communities, vulnerable children that have been impacted by crisis, poverty, and so many other things. And not just creating access, but also ensuring that they are learning and they're equipped, to live wholesome lives and thrive. I'm also passionate about creating platforms for development practitioners. I am a development practitioner. I do the work of social impact. And we give and pour ourselves out, and we tend to forget ourselves that we need to report into. And as such, I founded the Development Conversations Global platform for development and social impact workers to come together and, have conversations that matter, that drive impact, but also that into them. I am a wife of one man. I'm one wife of one man. Trying to change what men usually say. I'm a husband of one woman. That's Ransomed. We live together in Abuja, and I serve in a community, the Finishing Church, where I serve as a pastor together with my lead pastors, stewarding the assignment, that God has given the church. Yeah, so that's it about me. Thank you.
That's all? Is that all? Wow, amazing. You're clearly doing so much work. And as I was just listening, I just thought, wow, that's pretty impressive. And I know obviously it's been a journey to get to this point. So perhaps you can paint us a picture. I know you didn't start off your career just like right out of the university, knowing you wanted to do all these things. When
Yeah.
the impact work stopped feeling abstract for you and started feeling like deeply personal to the point that you even created something that would really support the work of those doing impact work?
So for me, impact work has always been personal. I remember, growing up, always wanting to serve in children church, helping out, with everyone. I wanted to be a doctor
Mm.
because I read Ben Carson, basically. I'm so glad that did not happen because I don't know. I couldn't stand the sight of blood. I still cannot stand the sight of blood. So I don't know. But yeah, but I've always just loved, being around children, wanting to work with them. So I knew that I wanted to do something that had to do with children, but it wasn't clear. And after secondary school, I got to volunteer with He Intends Victory, a governmental organization that provided support for HIV AIDS patients. And it was a very little stint, but that kind of like deepened, the desire to just want to do something for people. And as I got into university and, my late pastor then, may God bless his memory, Reverend Carnos, took us through this session and teaching where he kept on asking us about our purpose, what ignites your passion, like those questions, those sessions, they were so recurring. And so I became acquainted with what I wanted to do. I knew that, at one point, I just want to go into a village, start a school. I just had so many ideas. I wanted to start a community library. There were just a lot. And then I served, I volunteered in a missionary school in Jos when I was in my final year of university and got into teaching. So for me, impact work has always been a thing of the heart. I got into it, although I did not start off like saying, oh, I'm going to work in a development organization or
Yeah.
non-governmental organization or something like that. But my work has always been led by my heart and a desire to serve. But I've also had moments whereby it stopped being personal. So I remember when I got into the development space fully around 2016, it was the humanitarian context in Northeast Nigeria. I got in with my heart and everything, and then I was experiencing burnout. I didn't realize that it was burnout as of that time, but it stopped being personal. I stopped seeing people. I started seeing numbers. I started seeing reports. I started seeing deliverables. And I remember I started even asking myself, so why am I here? I started
Mm.
seeing my salary, and I can vividly remember it was around 2017 or 2018, around my birthday. I felt like, God, what am I doing in this space? I think it's time to leave, because I felt that disconnect and everything. And I went home on break, and then I had this moment where I reconnected again, and I was able to like see the people behind the work.
Wow. There's so many lessons I sort of picked from what you're sharing. Obviously, there are lots of opportunities for you to engage on a deeper level, and you said yes to them, finding you wanted to show up. And then just like taking that break, can't tell you enough how important it is to take breaks. I know we care so deeply, but
Yes.
yeah, you're going to burn out. And the
Okay.
people, the things that you really want to impact, they are going to end up suffering for it, right? If we're being honest.
Yes.
So taking
Yes.
is not a luxury and it's not a reward, and it's part of the work that we're doing.
Mhm.
So you've obviously worked with a lot of communities. And what has that taught you about people that theory never could? I know there's a difference between, just like you were saying, you stopped seeing people, you started seeing numbers. Like how do you help to ground that when you're engaging with communities?
Yeah, so I think what I do is to listen. I've
Mm,
learned that a solution imposed without listening doesn't last.
mm,
When I started the work, even though I knew that I was driven by passion, there was an arrogance with which I came into, like, I know what needs to be done. I had done my master's in early childhood studies. I
yeah,
had worked in different private schools. Like, I had a solution for education.
yeah.
And, I was just so passionate and naive, and I felt like I had the solution. So by the time I was coming in, I was conversing with people in the community as if I was coming with the solution. I'm so thankful for that first role I had with an international organization, where we had to go through series of training to
Mm,
ground and to change our mindset that no, you are not coming in as saviors, right? So some of the most insightful perspective I've heard have come from women and girls, in rural communities, young
mm,
people navigating difficult realities, or local facilitators working with almost nothing but commitment and wisdom. And so I have learned, what the communities have taught me is that people are far more resilient,
mm,
intelligent, and resourceful than systems often assume. And we're not the know-it-all, right? We don't have all the solutions. When we come in, even if we come in with interventions, even before we design interventions, we have to do it alongside them. And then also, like, the work has also taught me that people do not only need aid, they need dignity, ownership, and belief. So
yeah.
real transformation happens, when people are seen as partners and not just projects. So these are some of the things that working with communities has taught me about people, that you might find some of them in theory, but it's only as you engage and you listen with them that you're going to actually see it clearly. So for me, what I have learned is that the work, basically, that people do not really need, they do not only need aid, they also need dignity, ownership, and belief. And real transformation happens when people are seen as partners and not projects. Thank you.
That's so true. I think even in relationships, for me in the past when I've tried to help someone, like I always say, you can take a horse to the river or something, but you can't force it to drink water. Like what you're
Yeah.
saying is so important. You need to carry them along in a
Mhm.
conversation. No matter what type of impact work you're doing, if you want to help people, even just creating content on social media, right? You need to be able to be paying attention to your audience and what resonates with them if you actually want them to engage with what you're doing. So I feel like that's a wisdom that applies across board in
Yes.
all situations. Was there a season where the emotional weight of the work affected you more than you expected? Because there's clearly a lot, especially if you're investing in people, there's going to be a lot of emotional weight tied to that. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I've experienced that a lot, but I would reflect on my first experience with that.
Mm,
Basically, working in the humanitarian sector and experiencing, because it was during the peak of insurgency.
mm,
We were providing education intervention, so education mainstreamed with protection and GBV interventions, that's gender-based violence interventions and the likes of it. And I was interacting with children, girls and women that had been affected and impacted by the insurgency, the Boko Haram crisis. A lot of them had fled from their communities. And so when they tell you their stories and things like that, I didn't realize that it had so much impact on me until I burnt out. Like it was really, really bad because I was taking on the emotional load. At that point, I didn't take advantage, of the mental health supports that we had in the organization. I didn't even pay attention to it. I just felt like, oh no, let's get in there. Let's do the work. These people have been impacted by insurgency. Look at me. I'm fine. And there's nothing wrong with me. And so I
Yeah.
was taking on the load. I was taking on the burden. I would find myself crying, as they share, because no one can come face to face with their stories and actually remain the same, except if you are a hardened criminal. And so I would cry and everything. And then just the state of things happening, the state of their living condition in the camp. A lot of them were who said in primary schools. Remember, it had just happened. And so there were not a lot of interventions or preparations for them.
Mm.
It was a lot, and I had to take a break from the humanitarian sector completely. And I was
Wow.
so fortunate that I had a change of role in like 2019. I left the humanitarian sector. I went to development, but I didn't deal with my emotions. And so anytime I would now go to the classrooms, because we were still working in underserved communities, but they were not impacted by any form of insurgency or crisis. So now I'll go to the classrooms and I'll see children sitting on the floor. I will start crying. And I remember coming back home and having a conversation with my dad, and he was like, you cannot take on all the solutions, as all the problems, because you do not have the capacity to solve it. All you have to do is just, do what you can in your little space and things like that. So that conversation kind of recentered me. And then I also kept on talking about it, with different people, took advantage of the structures that we had at work. And yeah, so I always reflect on that because I feel like that was my first introduction to burnout, not just physical burnout, but also mental and emotional exhaustion.
So important because honestly, no matter what problem you're trying to solve, if you get so focused on it, it feels overwhelming, feels bigger
Yes.
than and you start to drown in it. But if you can sort of, zoom out a bit and say, okay, what's the next small step I can take?
Yes.
It might not seem like you're doing a big deal, but it compounds over time. And what you said about ignoring the mental support that was available, it's really important that we use those resources that are available to us. Even if our organization doesn't even build something into place for us, we need to also be intentional about doing that. Like have a place, have a friend. If you need to go to therapy, if you need a couch, some place where you can sort of decompress and reset. For me, I always, when I'm coming back from work, I take a walk home and I find that it's quite helpful. We have a clinical therapist in the office as well, and we have to meet her every month. But I also find that sometimes those daily activities or walking home from the office allows me to have enough space and just clear my head so that when I get home, I'm not carrying the burdens of work into this kids and my husband. So I think it's it's so important.
Yes.
But even beyond that, right? There's times where you go into a space, you're like, yes, I want to do this, I want to do that. And then you're putting in so much work and you're at the end of the month, you're not really seeing anything happening. Like it can be so discouraging sometimes. How do you stay hopeful? How do you stay focused? How do you keep going when you're feeling like meaningful change is taking longer than you expected?
I think one of the things that has helped me over time is understanding that a meaningful change takes time. And because I am in education, in the education sector, it has to do with human capital development. It has to do with behavioral change, that takes a longer time. And I cannot compare the work that I do with the work that people in shelter or people in nutrition will do, whereby they're able to see the change, some of the change matrix within a short time. I know that some of their change matrix can take longer, but the ones that have to do probably with improvements in the probably like the nutrition matrix of children and the rest, maybe they can see it in a shorter time. So just grounding myself in that. And also I have to honestly, I had to find helpful coping mechanism. And I think it's linked to the last question that you asked, because as you were talking about some of the strategies that you use, in just decompressing, I realized that a lot of development practitioners, especially those within the humanitarian context or crisis context, we tend to resort to harmful coping mechanism. So that's where you have people drinking, getting involved in the wrong relationships. Some of them, even get into extramarital affairs and things like that. And it's just because of the stress and not knowing how to manage it. And I think that is also related to staying grounded, especially when I don't see the results immediately. So why do I say that? I've had experiences whereby I started becoming cynical, right? And then even becoming worried that this work that I'm doing is not making a change. It's not making an effect. I remember 2 years ago, I went to a national conference, and where basically it's the National Conference for Education, and different partners came together. And it has, for me at that point, that year, I started feeling that most of the workshops or conferences I was attending for education, it just started becoming like a reunion whereby I see all the people that I have worked with and the rest, and we're having the same conversations and nothing was changing. And by the time that the year was wrapping up in November during that conference, I met my aunt and we're having dinner, and I basically used that precious 1 hour, 30 minutes to just pour out my frustration on her. I was just ranting and I told her, Auntie, I'm very scared. I do not think that we're going to make it in education because it feels like we're saying the same thing over and over again. And after that, but then I think what helped me was that she listened. She listened to me. She did not say anything, and she just allowed me to talk. And the next day, I went for a prayer meeting. I was organized by my beloved big brother, Pastor Mo. It was illegal. And then I basically, that meeting was just for me because it was like hope arising all over again. So what has helped me grounded is, apart from understanding that change takes time, but also being surrounded by the right people, right? That pour into you, people that will hear you and listen to you when you talk. Sometimes you don't just want to hear solutions. Sometimes you just you need a safe space to pour out your frustrations and concerns. And a lot of times we can't do that at work. We can't do that in the safe spaces because it's going to be, or in the spaces that we have, because it's going to look like you are anti the work that you're doing. Say that you don't believe in what you're doing and the likes of it. And then also, for me, it's God, going back to God. So the example I gave about going to a prayer meeting and just sharing the word of God and just praying among believers that are also believing God for change. Because one of the prayer points during that meeting was basically that, we're not going to get used to the challenges. We're not going to get used to disasters. We're not going to get used to seeing children that are supposed to be in school walking on the streets, because one thing that our environment does is try to desensitize us to the needs, because you are constantly bombarded by bad news. And that also like helped me. After that, I was like, yes, yes, it's going to happen. And then the next year, I gave birth to the development conversations, because it was like a culmination of all those experiences and conversations. I was like, no, I'm not the only one first facing these. Practitioners are having these conversations, because before you get into the space of social impact, you feel like you know that you have a solution, but you feel like you can do it within a short space. Once you get into it, you now realize that, my goodness, I am dealing with an octopus that has not just 8 legs, it has 20 legs or 25 legs, and it's growing more legs, right? And so sometimes you can get so discouraged and the rest. So that made me to come up with TDC. I think it was just a God ordained answer, for that. And through TDC, we have hosted conversations around making impacts and lasting impacts and sustainability. So it's just about having the right perspective, having community, that will energize you, and then also focusing on what is changing as against what is not changing, and believing that the little that I'm doing is a drop. It's a drop in an ocean. And I'm not the only one. Sorry, I'm going to quickly preface, was it Elijah in the Bible that was having this woe is me moment? He was crying. And then God told him, my guy, there are 7 other prophets that have not bowed their knees. There are 7,000 other prophets. So also realizing that I am not the only one that is doing the work. Progress is quietly happening in people's systems and communities every day.
Yeah, that's so good. I love it. I think as you were going, I just kept thinking to myself, well, that's why TDC was essential to be birthed, because there was lots of people that were struggling with those things. You come in with these big goals, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, what's going on? There's so much confusion, and you don't want to deal with that crisis on your own. So it's really important that community, people that are sort of struggling with the same thing, but then also there's progress being made. You're reminded that actually you're not alone and that we're all facing the same thing, but then we can also rally together and create solutions together. I told one of my team members a few months ago, I said, I like problems always because every time I'm faced with a problem, my mind is constantly thinking about how can we find a solution for this. So I think also it's about having a mindset shift. Like, yes, there's going to be problems coming up. There's going to be things sort of like getting in your way, but take it as a sort of like a challenge. Now, what? How am I going to fix this? What are we going to do? How are we going to make sure that this is something that the next person coming doesn't face? And they can a way to sort of navigate it. So I'm so glad that, I love how, like, many of the times the personal struggles that we're going through, if we really push through it, we can create solutions, not just for ourselves, but others that are coming after us. And I think that that's just something spectacular about being human. I really love it so much. One of my favorite stories is about Miss Rachel. Anyone that's got a kid or has a kid in their life knows Miss Rachel's story so much because it was because of her son and the struggles that he was having. And she pushed it and she said, what can I do to help my kid? And that's how she's come into this whole, like, every kid all across the world knows about Miss Rachel and their lives are impacted by her. And so anyone that's listening right now, you might be thinking, oh, I would love to be in this space, but I don't want to be humanitarian. I don't want to do this. I don't know how to get. Well, it's just always sometimes looking at the problems that you're struggling with and trying to dig deeper and finding the solutions for that. And, then you end up impacting people beyond yourselves.
Yes.
Just amazing. Just amazing. So there's people that are listening and are watching and maybe they have some misconceptions about, the development space or impact work. What have you noticed that people truly misunderstand about that space and working there?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that people misunderstand is that they always think that the work is constantly inspiring and fulfilling. Like, I'm working on sunshine. My people, my guy, it is not always that. It is a lot of back work. It is also administrative. The number, of administrative tasks that you need to do to host an inspiring event. I'm sure you can relate. You're having the sports festival, and when somebody says like, "Oh my God, this is so inspiring! I want to do that," but you understand the work. You understand the level of work that it's taking for you to host that sports festival, right? But it's also emotionally demanding, just as I've touched on. It is politically complex and sometimes deeply exhausting, physically, mentally, emotionally exhausting. Politically complex in that you're navigating so many different things. Apart from having colleagues that you need to learn how to work with and manage, you're also working with government systems, you're working with community systems, you're working with so many people that you have to learn how to navigate. People often underestimate how much patience, negotiation, emotional intelligence, and resilience the work requires. You need to be emotionally, sound. You need to learn, negotiation. You have to, just so many skills, right? And also they assume that everyone in the sector has everything figured out, right? So, but many people doing meaningful work are also navigating uncertainty, burnout, funding pressure, and personal struggles. And we just show up and just keep the work going. Another thing is that people feel like we're earning dollars, we're earning billions of money. I remember when I first got my role, like in structured organization, that was like 2016, and someone reached out to me and said, please, they wanted a loan of a particular amount, and that was not even up to my salary. I was like, wait, do you believe that I'm earning this money? She said yes. I said, oh, please pray for me so that I'll earn this amount of money. And it took me a longer time, like years, to even get to that amount. And I remember another conversation I stumbled on Twitter where people were like, people that are working in Northeast, they are earning dollars. There is house, there is car. I was reading the thread, I had to share it with my husband, who is also a development practitioner like myself, and we were laughing. And we're like, oh well, so it's not the money. I know that people get into the role because of money, because they feel like they're going to get it. If you get it because of the money alone, the money is going to frustrate you because you quickly realize that the amount of work you're doing cannot be paid by anybody. It cannot be paid. You are giving this amount, but what is collected from you, what you give of yourself willingly, the cost of the work is far more than the monetary accounts, the monetary value or benefits. And another
Wow.
thing again is that people feel like, impact is loud and visible.
Mm,
Yes, we are in is it visibility economy where everything you do has to be made known by people. You're explaining, you're shouting and things like that. Or people need to just hear it on social media. But it's beyond that. The impact, some of the most important work happens quietly. If you're
yeah.
doing work that has to do, for example, with GBV and the rest, you're not going to come online and talk about the girls that are survivors and things like that, because you have to protect them. And then there are some policies that you work on also. They are hidden, they're quiet, there are frameworks that you come on. You're not going to talk about them and
Yeah.
shout about them. So the impact work is it's not always loud or visible, right? Through system strengthening, community trust building, advocacy, consistency, and long-term investments, they may not trend online, but they're actually happening.
Absolutely. I think that's something I've actually struggled with is like maintaining the dignity of the people that I work with, because you're right, that visibility era, it makes you feel like you do have to put so much out there. I've struggled quite a bit. But I've come to terms with like there's a bit of a balance, because you want people to know what you're doing so that they
Yeah.
can, support and collaborate and put the message forward. But you can't do it at the sacrifice or the expense of the people that you're actually trying to help. You must maintain their dignity. It's very,
Mhm.
very that every human deserves a dignifiable stance. You can't use their stories as a way to get cheap likes or, comments or reposts or things like that. So it's always going to be like a bit of a balance. But yeah, there's clearly so many things that people don't know about
What?
the development space, and I hope that this has brought some clarity for them. So if you do decide to join, or you've been joining people online, dragging those that are in impact space, I remember seeing something. There's this guy that likes lots of I think he's an investigator, but he was talking about this company that I know of that sort of is an implementing partner, and I
Yeah,
thought no
I
way
remember.
is possible, because there's so many layers of compliance and work that needs to be done for you to be able to get even one tiny little bit of money. So when you're
Yes.
there's, because we understand that the work that we're doing and the money that's coming into the work is taxpayers' money. It's
Mm-hmm.
not profit making organization where you're
Uh-huh.
said making off of it. This is people actually giving you their hard earned money. So there's a stricter level of compliance, there's a stricter level of just everything that we do has to meet a certain standard, because we understand what's been given. So
Mm.
don't take any of these things for granted, or at the very least, those of us that understand the impact of the work, don't take it for granted. So let
Yes.
me use the opportunity to say, if you got someone in your space or your community or your network that's doing impact work, please support them. Don't roll
Mm.
your eyes when you're sharing a flyer. Don't say, oh, here we go again. Don't say, how many orphans are you going to? Each person that's doing work like that is trying to play a tiny role in cleaning up the mess that has taken over the whole world. So please support your people around you. And if you haven't got anyone to support us. We're
Support Jesus Foundation.
we're always doing so many amazing things. So please, even if you can't give your time, at least give your resources so that actually the work can be done.
Mhm.
You've touched on quite a few things. I know you mentioned resilience and, being able to stay effective. But then there's also that if you're going into impact work, you're already sort of like a compassionate person. You're going there because you want to solve a problem. How do you sort of balance that, having compassion for the people that you want to impact, but staying effective and staying resilient?
Yeah, so for me, I've had to learn that compassion without boundaries eventually becomes exhaustion. I never learned how to rest, growing up. Like it was just because even as I became an adult, I didn't know how to rest. Yeah, you sleep at night and everything, but it was not something that I had intentionally put effort to rest and everything. And so for me, it was just all about pouring and pouring and pouring. And then also I had believed this fake gospel that you need to just keep giving and
Mm,
giving and giving and not taking out time to rest, right? But
yeah.
I've learned that effectiveness without compassion can become cold and disconnected. However, my compassion needs to have boundaries. So for me, the balance is always deeply human while also building healthy structures around my life and work. Does not mean that I have done it like 100% of time, because my husband will still say that I still come back from work and just go straight to my laptop, and
Yeah.
work. And then if you ask me, can you do this? I'll say yes. I'll keep
Mm,
saying yes and yes and yes. But it's so important, that we just learn how to put structures around our compassion. So this means learning to rest without guilt. At the beginning of this conversation, I will just reflect on our conversation. It's really like affirmed me. I know that when I came into 2026, I knew that I needed to rest. One of the words for the year from God was to rest. And I was telling one of my friends that it must show that I am very stubborn for God to tell me to rest, because rest is supposed to be a normal thing that you would do. So
yeah.
for you to need that instruction that rest, it means the coconut head is strong. But also just learning how to rest without guilt, and
Mm,
then asking for help when needed, and building strong teams. I think that
mm,
has helped me, this year I've relied heavily on my team. Not just in my 9 to 5, like in my 9 to 5 also. I think that's one of the things I'm so thankful for. I have strong team members, and I've learned how to just let things go, that when I go on leave, I'm actually on leave, and I'm so thankful for them. And we didn't start off that way. When we started off, it was just chaotic, learning how to understand each other, and me
yeah.
also just holding on the reins quickly. But I just realized I can't do it alone. And then
Mm,
also staying spiritually grounded, having a spiritual community. For me, my faith is so important. And so I don't play with my spiritual community, my pastors, my siblings in church. They pour into me, and they're just relying on that structure. I see like showing up for services or even Bible studies as pouring into me, as against me going for something.
yeah.
Sometimes as adults we say, I work 9 to 5, my evening is only for me. I'll now go to church, I'll go for this event or that. No, I see it as something that pours into me. So that really helps. And then also understanding that I am responsible to the work, but not solely responsible for fixing everything.
Mm,
I'm reminded of this story about the indispensable judge. It was in one of our English readers. I think it was in JSS2 or JSS1, about the
mm,
indispensable judge that was always there, always present and everything. But when he died, like the work continued, or when he passed away, the work continued, or something like that. And I just reminded that I am not indispensable. If
yeah.
today I move on, or I'm ill, or I leave the world and everything, this work will continue. And there are
Mm.
7,000 other prophets and more that are doing the work. So
Okay.
for me, finally, also, I've learned that resilience is not pretending to be strong all the time. Sometimes it is honesty. I mentioned that earlier this year, I shut down TDC. I put a pause on everything that we're doing. And on the schedule, we have TDC community. On the schedule for the community, we're supposed to shut down, I think, sometime was it October or something, May, June or something like that. And I just knew that I could not continue. I just came out and told the community, sent them a message, each and every one of them, that I'm sorry, we cannot continue, because I felt that disconnect. I felt that tiredness and everything. And that honesty, I know that it doesn't look good as a founder for you to just disappear and everything, but I just knew that we couldn't continue. And so just being honest is also resilience. Resilience is also slowing down, and it's also just choosing sustainability over constant urgency.
That's so good. I do have to say that actually you didn't just disappear, you communicated
Yeah.
what was going on with you and you shared that with your people. And honestly, I'll tell you, the more I the more I experience so many things and the more I live as a human, I realize that that's one of the most important things we can do is show up as humans, because we're showing others around us that it's okay as well. Things are gonna happen. We're gonna have things popping up. We might fall ill. We might just be exhausted. We might have issues with our kids or our personal lives, whatever. The most important thing is, don't ghost, just disappear. Share as
Mm.
much as you can. Obviously, there's places where you don't share too much. You share what you can. Let them know that you're pausing. And what you're doing is that you're showing them in their own spaces that they can also give themselves that permission as well. And the more likely that they do that, the more they can actually keep the work moving. Because
Yes.
one of the things I told God when I started my serious journey with Him is I also want to enjoy the journey, not just striving towards the destination. I can be quite
Mm.
hard on myself. So I said to Him, I want to be able to enjoy the journey. And so when I
Yeah.
find myself getting really slow and tired, I struggle a bit, but then I remind myself that actually I did say I want to enjoy the journey. So I take a break, and
Mm.
then sometimes I then start to worry, hope I'm not enjoying the break too much. But as a believer and a I can trust that God will also nudge me when it's time to get back in there. Like, I don't have to stay on guard or be worried or afraid about losing the work or not doing. There's always so many different reasons that we'll be afraid, But look, if you're not a Christian, I would recommend it
True,
1000%. Have the
true.
Holy Spirit inside of you. It's truly a game changer because it just takes off that, if you truly accept and lean into his support and his help, it takes off that burden of you trying to figure everything out by yourself. And there's just so many things that we're carrying, especially as people that have taken on the burden of helping others.
Mhm.
You can get really heavy. But if you truly have the Holy Spirit and community, I can't tell you enough how important it is, that fellowshipping of the brethren is so, 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 so,
Yes.
so important. If you don't have that, please, TDC, I'm sure we'll put her link on there. Please go to their page. They've got a wonderful space for people that truly wanted to impact others. So plug into a community, honestly. And I think that it will make such a difference in your life and the work that you're doing so that you can actually continue doing the work at a sustainable pace. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I know that you've shared with us at the beginning of the episode how you've sort of transitioned from one role to the other. I'm
Mhm.
sure that sometimes with the transitions, there might be some uncertainty or difficult seasons in your work. How do you sort of sustain yourself through those highs and lows and, different seasons?
So for me, as you might have picked up by now, is that I'm a deeply, faith-centered person. My faith drives my journey, my relationship with God, literally, and faith has sustained me deeply. That's something that has kept me grounded. God has kept me grounded. My relationship with God has been my anchor through uncertainty, transitions, disappointments, and leadership pressures. And even when I fail or when I make mistakes, I go back, I would always remember one of the life-changing journeys I went through at work a couple of years ago, where I was being investigated for an accused misconduct, and it was alleged, but my name was later cleared. But the thing was that it was such a painful process for me because I pride myself in being someone that is by the books and things like that. And so that shook my foundation, that shook my identity. And I remember I would just open the book of Psalms and be crying, God, why have you forsaken me?
Yes.
I love the book of Psalms. Like literally, I will now open another one. Let my enemies, God, let there be disgrace. Really helped me though, because a couple of years down the line, I had an acquaintance that was going through something at work, and she shared on her status that she needed support. I had ammunition. I said, "You see this scripture? What with these scriptures?" Truly, truly, it is the things that we go through and overcome or even fail at. That is what we use to encourage others, because our journeys are not just for ourselves. Our story is not just for ourselves, it's for everyone. Even as I'm saying it, I'm not finding it funny because I'm like, God. But yeah, but
Yeah.
God, my faith is my anchor. And even before I move, before I make any transitions, I always need to be aligned with God. Like, recently I was having this conversation with God. I was like, God, it's not even about the money. If you tell me to stay where I am currently, I will stay. Will I be uncomfortable or pained? Yes, but I believe that you are my source and I don't want to go where you're not.
Yeah.
Getting into the development space was God ordained for me. Every career move that I have made has been God ordained. And that is another reason again why I know without any reasonable doubt that my journey, my growth cannot be attributed to any man or woman on earth. Have they been instrumental? Absolutely. God will not come down and say, here's your job offer. I've had amazing mentors. I have had people that have advocated for me, but they were only doing that because God brought them into my path, and then also even bringing the right resources for me to grow, the desire to learn and everything. So when I say my faith, I'm also talking about the daily decisions that I make, to grow to this thing. When I go to church, like my pastor is huge on human capital development. That's Pastor Fred Rick Adetiba, and his wife, Lady Kems. She's also our pastor. They're huge on human capital development. And even when we interact with messages, it's about our growth. It's about how much you're being transformed to be a better person, to be a change maker. So you can see why I don't joke with my faith at all. And then clarity of purpose. One thing I'm thankful for is the process I've gone through in life, early on in life, has shaped and given me clarity on what I need to do in life. So for the longest of time, I knew that my calling was working with children, but then how it showed up was different. So just having that clarity of purpose. And in every season, it expands, it changes. So for example, I never knew that I would do anything like the Development Conversations Global, me host a webinar care. For what? But look at me, I'm hosting quarterly webinar, and things like that. And so just clarity of purpose at every season, knowing what I need to do. I always feel that restlessness when it's time to transition, and I just lean into it. I talk to people, ask for counsel, submit myself to mentorship and guidance, And honestly, another thing is community. I'm huge on community and people who remind me of who I am outside of work, who encourage me. My husband is my number one support system. I always say that I don't think I'll be where I am or doing the level of work that I'm doing. And I also know I'm just starting, without my husband's support, someone that will the truth of the matter is that I know that we don't like saying, especially in this time of autonomy, we don't like saying that her husband allowed her to do the work. But whether we like it or not, whoever you are paired with is going to impact your life and how much you're going to do and how much impact work or how much of yourself you're going to give to God. So having a spouse that is supportive and just allows you to thrive. There's an allowing in relationships, whether we like it or not. And it's vice versa for men or for women. So for me, I have just been absolutely blessed with the best community. They challenge me, tell me that this is not who I am. Or when they say, oh, Tobi, you're audacious, I was like, hey, it means I'm audacious, and this helped me to keep my perspective. So these are the three things, like among many others, that have just helped me, and sustained me through different transitions.
Hey, girl, you said it all. Shout out to all the good husbands, because honestly, my husband, like, he's just taking like my ideas and like elevated them so much, and just a different perspective that I never would have had on my own. I just want to say there are times in my life where I felt quite alone and I didn't really have anyone. I think that it can be scary to be in those situations, and you can feel like no one else understands you. And you listen to us and say, oh, we're lucky, blah, blah, blah. And yes, I can understand that. But I also want you to be courageous, because a lot of the times the communities that we have around us now, they didn't come and meet us at home, right? It has to come to a point where you realize, okay, I do want more. I do want people around me that support me. Maybe you've had times in your life where people have betrayed you, whatever. An indictment on friendships or community doesn't mean that community is bad. Or even when you hear stories about marriage, it doesn't necessarily mean that marriage is bad. It's that perhaps the people that have paired themselves together are not the right fit. Even though you might have had communities you trusted in the past and they did you dirty, I want you to try again. And if you're a believer like us, about it and trust Holy Spirit to lead you to the right church. Because look what she's saying about just being in her church. Like, I've seen some of the things that they're doing. I even told your pastor, Kemi, I said, look, I love what's going on with the community, because I can see how you guys really root for each other. You can see like love and the support. And I can tell you the difference between having people have your back, knowing that people are supporting you, and then the difference between being alone. It's huge. You don't want to feel life alone. You want to have people around you, because the honest truth is, when you're alone, it's more likely that you're going to be taken advantage of, and you miss out on so many different perspectives. What you end up creating is not as refined, is not as full or robust, because you've done it on your own. But if you have different people putting their input in there, good people, valuable people, end up creating something that's much more impactful. So please, don't take it for granted. Don't think that it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. Go out there and look for those communities. And if you're in the impact space and you don't know what to do, like I said, Tobi's got a wonderful community. I'm absolutely vouching for that. So please, please, please plug in somewhere. Okay. And if you're a young girl that's looking for mentorship and things like that, we've also got that too. We are big on community, because I believe strongly that you can only go so far by yourself. But if you lots of people working together, you can go so much, much, much faster, better, higher. There's just, it's just a wonderful catalyst for growth. But I digress.
Let's say something. But let me just say,
Yes, please,
to
go ahead.
wrap up, if I may. The truth of the matter is that the cost of community is inconvenience. And we cannot build community without inconveniencing ourselves. And that's something that we need to, say. So yes, you want community and the rest. You have to show up for people. You have to build. You have to be inconvenienced, right? And we have to remove that mindset that is very prevalent now, that I do not owe anyone anything. That's not true. You owe yourself, you owe God, you owe people around to be a decent human being. And, just to say that what you mentioned also about being hurt and everything, my goodness, your heart is going to be broken. You're going to have betrayal. I have faced, oh my goodness, I have faced a lot, like the last year, in fact, and everything. And that has made me to want to shrink back. But that is not who God has called us to be. God has given us a spirit of not fear, but of love, of sound mind, right? And that comes with also just opening ourselves to be healed and everything. And then being led by God. If you're someone that is like me, that is so open, or like Nana-Hauwa, that is just, so open, you're so loving and everything, you also need to be led. You also need to pray for the right people to come into your field. You cannot just be open and naive. I think that's something that I've had to learn. You cannot say that, I have a good heart, everybody else has a good heart. Please apply wisdom. And then also, if there's someone that is always having problems and saying they don't have a track record of relationships, seriously look into that. You're not the angel that will change their track record. I am sorry. I have now gotten to that point where I'm like, if you don't have anyone in your life that has been in your life for like a particular number of years, there's no consistency. You're always saying, this person fights with me. My brother, my sister, you're a red flag. So I digress also, but back to you.
So important. Honestly, we all have to do the work. It doesn't matter. Even those of us that are talking to you now, like, we're constantly doing the work as well. And that's why community is so important, because there are some things you will not be able to identify that you need to work on when you're in isolation, because you're not engaging with people. But when you're engaging with people and you notice, actually, I've hurt this person, or this person has said I've hurt them.
Yes.
If you think we're just being, difficult, you can still reflect and look at it. Actually, what can I take from this that can use to build myself up? So, we digress, but I think it's really important. I mean, you said. So there's probably people listening and they want to do meaningful work. They're feeling overwhelmed by the scale of the problem in the world, because honestly, there's so many problems.
Yeah.
But like, where should they begin? Where would someone begin?
I would say begin where you are. Don't be pressured to build an organization or to start. You guys, I had this issue basically. I remember before I started working in a proper work setting, I was volunteering a lot. Even after my master's, I was 2016, I was doing a lot of volunteer work, and then I had so much ideas. I was going to build a library. I was going to do this. I've given all the names and everything. And so by the time I got a 9-to-5, someone actually chatted me up and said that you are betraying your vision. You're supposed to be building. And I remember coming back, home. I was telling my dad, I'm really close to my dad. I'm a daddy's girl because I'm named after his mom. Shout out to my daddy. I'm also a mommy's girl, but I stress her a lot. So that's just by the way. I remember having that conversation with my dad, and he was like, you don't have to build. It's not every idea that you get that you build. Now he now asked me, look at your work. You're doing X, Y, Z, this, and all. Compared to what you've written, are you not being paid to do exactly what you want to do? I was like, oh my God. So what was the pressure to build? So I'm not lying. Community libraries, since when I was in the university, as far back as 9, 8, and the likes of it, I had already written that I wanted to build community libraries and things like that. And I'm literally doing that. I'm being funded, through my organization, where I work, to do that. Almost everything I've ever dreamed of. Then there are also those that are called to build. Do not buy into the pressure that your salary, your 9-to-5, is a bribe for you to forget your dreams. Go. As people that are building things. Yeah. So
you also look at it as a training ground, because there's so many more people that actually need to be in a 9-to-5 structured environment that skipped out on it, and they're making such a mess. Even if you get that 9-to-5, at least do some sort of training that builds you up in that regard, so that you can actually well.
The truth of the matter also is that those of us that are building, we're also establishing 9-to-5. So you say that you're not called to do 9-to-5, you built your business. The people that will come and work, are they not doing 9-to-5 in your business? Anyways, I digress. So just begin where you are, start with what your hands can do, identify places that you can volunteer. And it doesn't have to be the big organizations. We're so obsessed with going to the big organizations. If it happens, glory be to God, wonderful. But there are lots of organizations that, that are doing work. Even in your church, or if you're not a Christian, I'm sure that there might be another foundation that is doing something that you can align with. Start there. If you're passionate about what you call it, menstrual hygiene or period poverty, there's so many that are doing it. You don't have to do it. Contribute your 1,000, 2,000. If you're just start where you are. I think many of people also become overwhelmed because they are looking at the whole problem, like trying to solve global problems before learning how to serve faithfully in small ways. So, and meaningful work begins with paying attention to your community, the people around you, to your skills, your convictions, and the needs around you. Also that you can also start by, you can see maybe your guard or your nanny, their child is not in school, and maybe the school fees is just 1,000 naira. You can do that. So you do not need to carry everything to make a difference somewhere. Honestly, sometimes it starts with mentoring one young person, supporting one initiative, volunteering your skills, or simply, committing to care consistently. Small acts done with integrity compound over time, and that is where to start. And for people that also want to get into the mainstream development space, you also need the skills. So if you're in your 9 to 5, continue in your 9 to 5, because the skills you're building in your 9 to 5 is going to translate into what you're doing, and just keep putting yourself out there. The truth is that the funding landscape in the development space has changed thanks to the person in the US, but it has changed drastically. But what that has done is that it is making people to look at how else we can solve the problems, because even though the funding has reduced, the problems are still on the rise and they're taking different forms and shape. And so what is making everyone to do is just to think outside of the box and things like that. And the stars of the show are no longer the big NGOs or the UNICEFs, and the likes of it. I don't want to call any other place before they send me query, and the likes of, they're no longer the stars of the shows. There are other smaller organizations that are doing great and mighty work, key into that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
So you've talked about we're in that visibility economy or whatever they are calling it, where like if you're not posting this or putting that, like people are thinking you're not doing anything. How do you sort of stay connected to purpose without burning yourself out trying to prove that you're doing something? Because sometimes the work is slow, or even
Yes.
going fast. Like we don't, because sometimes it feels like some people lose track of actually doing the work and then focus on putting out that they're doing the work. Yeah. So like, how do you balance it, or how do you even stay connected and stay true to actually what the work is supposed to be in the first place without losing track of things?
I think the first thing is your identity, knowing your why, like who are you outside of the work? If you've built your identity around what you're doing, you're going to burn yourself out and even going to get into trouble by lying. See, I've had some colleagues that when I see some former colleagues, when I see their LinkedIn profile, I'm like, so those of us, we're not working. Yeah, I'm also doing my work. I'm sorry. And that's because people are committed to portraying who they are not. The first thing is you as a human being, as a person. Who are you? Your work is just one of the many expressions of who you are. There's a lot of pressure, but you have to ground yourself in your identity. Who are you? For those of us that are believers, we get our grounding from God, that God constantly reminds you that you are, first of all, my child before you are anything. We say being before doing. That is so important. And because there are moments that genuinely nothing is happening in your life. Genuinely nothing they happen. But you fabricate it. So that grounding in our identity and who we are is what will keep you. And then also having people that will hold you accountable. Today, if I post something, trust me. First of all, my husband will be like, excuse me. Do you have to post that? Because I am an oversharer. Did you have to post that? Did this really happen? Then I have friends, I have community, I have people that will hold me accountable. So sometimes, we don't have the strength in ourselves to even like stay true to ourselves and our seasons. people around you hold you accountable. Hey, Tobi, how far now? I saw that you did this. Why did this happen? You can lie to people online, but you can't lie to people, But it's so important also. But then just having the values, we have to be true to ourselves. People out there are going to keep posting. There are people that that they are lying and the rest, but you cannot also just bring yourself to that level,
Yeah.
So yeah, just having a strong sense of identity and having people that will hold you accountable, having values. And the thing is that the pressure is going to get worse and worse. What are you going to do about that? No, you have to tell yourself, will I be somebody that will keep lying? I gave an example with TDC and having to shut down, saying that no, need to take a break. Let me not lie. I've actually felt the pressure by myself. I'll now go online. I'm last year, I did 30 days of content in September, and then I just ran away literally, and I've not posted anything tangible on LinkedIn. And there's that pressure that they're not saying anything. People don't know what you are doing and everything, but I do not feel like I'm in the headspace to do that. This year I've taken a break and I've started feeling that pressure that, what if somebody comes, takes your idea, and be vulnerable, because these are the things that we face day to day. But just having that conversation with you also grounded me. And truly, truly, I cannot manufacture or fabricate what we are doing. So that's my advice. I don't know if there's anything I can say again.
Oh my goodness, thank you. And honestly, we know that this is a real issue. We all sort of struggle with it, right? Because it's quite easy when there's no place you can even escape it anymore. Even WhatsApp status.
And to start the pressure.
Everywhere you go, someone's posting a picture and sharing what they're doing. And they might just be, they might actually be just them doing their wanting
they're
you
doing
to.
it.
Can now say, I'm not going to go. You are going to go online. You're going to talk to people. People are going to be doing things, but you got to be, like she said, grounded enough in who you are, what you're about, why you're doing what you're doing, so that you don't get carried away by comparison or looking at what others are doing. Get comfortable with say, hey, that's amazing, good job, or something.
Yes.
And if you're in that space where you then feel strong enough to be sharing, go ahead and share. Just respect your seasons. I know it's really, really hard. The more you actually appreciate and respect those seasons, the better for you, the more authentic you have. Look, there are some questions, there are some things that I used to, when I was younger, I used to look at people doing interviews and I'm like, how did they know what to answer? But it's because you've lived it. We've lived it now. Because we'll have answer. And what we don't even have answer to say, I don't
get out. I don't know.
But it's when you're uncertain about yourself, you're overthinking and second guess. Just get comfortable with being you. Like I was talking to one of my colleagues, I said, look, you don't need to compare yourself with anyone. If you're facilitating a group session or something, there's 2 team leads. Even if the group members are leaning towards and respecting someone else, forget about it. You focus on what you're bringing, what's unique about you that can add value to that group. You don't need to try to be anybody else. When you're trying to be others, that's when you struggle. That's when you it's just not worth it, honestly. It's not sustainable. Every time you're looking in the mirror, you look at yourself as a fraud. Is that what? It's not worth it to look at yourself as a fraud. That's the worst thing. Be honest with yourself. Be real with yourself. Remove all the filters. Those of you that like putting plenty filters,
remove it too.
Don't get to the point where you look at your own face and you hate it. It's a terrible thing because God has designed you uniquely. The God that created the heavens and the earth, that created you, He was intentional. He said there needs to be a you in this world. You will not go and reduce that sanctified, sacred, beautiful thing that God imagined and decided needed to exist and reduce it to nothing. You're absolutely worth it. And if you're afraid and you're second guessing yourself, then look at the areas that you're struggling with. Look at the areas you have a weakness. And go and watch some videos, read some articles, listen to some podcasts. The more you look, the more you're putting yourself out there, doing the work, volunteering, whatever it is that you need to do, the more you're building your capacity. And then you can actually look at yourself in the mirror and say, good job, girl. Good job, guy. There's no way to, jump ahead or do double. You miss out on so many lessons and learnings that will actually add value to what it is that you're trying to do. But I digress.
No, that was really helpful. That was really helpful. Thank you.
But so our final question, and we love asking this for everyone that comes on the show. In this season of your life, I know you've just recently taken a break, or maybe you're coming out of it, whatever. What does choosing well look like for you in this season?
So I'm going to pick what you said, just a couple of seconds ago, that for me, choosing well means honoring my season, right? It's so important. There are seasons of growth. There are seasons of taking a break, hiding. There are seasons where you're doing all the work and nothing is showing. So at all times, you're just honoring the seasons. So choosing well in slow season means remaining faithful even when results are not immediately visible, when no one is applauding you, It also means knowing when to just take a break, like I'm doing right now, and just shutting down the pressures to want to show workings, because we like showing workings as human beings, right? There are seasons where growth is happening beneath the surface in our character, in our discipline, your perspective, systems, your capacity. Not every important season looks externally impressive. So it's just honoring that even when nothing is happening, you as a human being, you're growing in different aspects of your life. And then also, I've learned that choosing well sometimes means continuing to build with integrity, even when applause is absent. Like I mentioned, like people are not always going to clap for you, but you continue doing things with integrity, because your why is so important. I didn't get in here because I wanted people to applaud me. I got in here because God placed a desire in my heart and He led me to this point. And I have to keep doing things for the audience of one, like we keep saying. It means resisting comparison. You also touched on that. The Bible says that he who compares himself with another is literally a fool. We don't like being called that. But that is what we do when you look at what another person is doing and we allow it get to us. We're comparing ourselves. My goodness, that's just being foolish. So I'm learning that. I'm resisting that comparison. We're currently studying the book of Samuel. I think it's First Samuel as a community in church. One of the days we're reading that's even what I read today, whereby the Israelites went to Samuel and said, "We want a king like other nations." And that wasn't God's plan for them. But what was the key point in time? Even though Samuel's children were misbehaving, they used it as an excuse and said, "Hey, there's no succession plan. There's corruption. Please give us a king like other nations." What that did was to reveal the state of their heart.
Yeah.
And so that is what happens to us when we compare. We start looking for things or asking for things that God did not send us to ask. And then resisting the pressure to perform and trusting that consistency matters even before visibility comes. So this for me, this is what choosing well in slow season means.
So good. Thank you so much. And bonus question, please.
That's all.
Now, what would you say to Toby maybe 15, 20 years ago? Maybe she's feeling uncertain, she doesn't know what's going on, but you've sort of seen the future.
Yeah. I would tell her that she's actually on the right path. Of course, there were some silly mistakes that she made. I say, I beg, no do that again. No. Listen to your father when he tells you he doesn't like that guy that you brought to the house. You see those older aunties that always tell you, don't do this, or these nosy aunties in church, more, they know what they are saying. Because as a young girl, I felt like I had it figured out. And I did not listen to a lot of advice. But on the other hand, I would say this path, this passion where you don't hold about working with children, give it your all, because that is actually where God wants you to be. So on one hand, listen to advice, don't do strong head. On the other hand, you see this path that you've chosen, girl, stay on it. You're actually on track. Give it your all. There's some relationships that I did not manage well. Manage relationships well. Don't be quick to cut off people. Just throw away that scissors. It does not make sense. That scissors I use every new year, I'm cutting off. It doesn't make sense. Be quick to apologize and make room for growth. That's what I would say.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Such a great conversation. I'm taking away so much, and it's answered some questions that I've had at the back of my mind. And I trust that everyone that's listening to this is being impacted positively. If you guys have questions or comments, please let us know. And the link for Toby's community, we're gonna put it in the caption of the video. So please click on it if this is something that you're looking for. Engage and let's get it moving, because the work that you want to do is impactful. I want to make sure that you're doing it and you're doing it well and you don't burn out. Thank you so much again for watching.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Toby. It's been so good. All right, guys, we'll catch you next month. As always, please keep choosing well. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.